6 months after first contact with the Keth Federation, Earth had become something no human had ever imagined. The planet was now headquarters for the galaxy's last free resistance. Massive orbital factories churned out weapons while refugee camps housed millions of alien survivors from dozens of different species. Every human on Earth knew that they were living through the most important moment in galactic history. Major Hanki 1 commanded the new special strike force that included both human soldiers and Keth warriors. He was a tough man with scars on his face from training accidents with alien weapons. His teams conducted desperate missions behind enemy lines, trying to rescue survivors from Devourer processing facilities. The missions were almost always suicide runs, but they provided crucial intelligence about how the ancient machines operated. The strike teams discovered that the Devourers were not just consuming consciousness for power, they were building towards something terrible. Every absorbed mind was being integrated into a massive collective intelligence that grew smarter and more dangerous with each conquest. The machines were not just harvesting species, they were becoming a single super-intelligent entity that could think faster than entire civilizations. Han Ki-wan's teams brought back rescued aliens who told horrifying stories about the harvesting process. The Devourers kept their victims conscious during the mind-draining procedure so they could feel their thoughts and memories being stolen piece by piece. Some survivors had been partially harvested before rescue, and they spoke in broken sentences as if parts of their minds were missing. Dr. Park So-min analyzed the testimony from rescued aliens and made a disturbing discovery. The Devourers had been studying human resistance techniques by observing the strike team missions. Every time humans used their consciousness interference, the machines learned a little more about how to counter it. The ancient intelligence was adapting faster than Earth could develop new defenses. Commander Choi Jin-ae lead fighter squadrons on increasingly dangerous patrol missions around Earth as Devourer scout ships probed the solar system's defenses. The enemy had learned to counter human resistance by using psychological warfare. Instead of direct mental attacks, the machine ships would broadcast the voices and images of missing loved ones, trying to trick human pilots into lowering their mental shield. Twilight's reported encounters where Devourer ships would project perfect recreations of dead family members begging to be rescued. The emotional manipulation was so realistic that several pilots had to be pulled from duty after suffering complete mental breakdowns. The ancient machines were learning to use human emotions as weapons against human minds. Captain Lee Min-ho commanded the Deep Space Reconnaissance Fleet that monitored Devourer movements throughout the galaxy. His scouts used the most advanced stealth technology that human and Keth scientists could create, but even the best hidden ships were being detected more often. The Devourers were developing new sensor systems that could find anything that moved through space. Lee's most recent reports painted a picture of inevitable doom. The three massive Devourer fleets were almost at the ancient Galactic core facility, and preliminary scans suggested they had enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. The machines were preparing for the final phase of their galactic conquest, and nothing seemed capable of stopping them. Lieutenant Colonel Yang Sujin coordinated intelligence from hundreds of sources throughout the galaxy, trying to find some weakness in the Devourer strategy. Her analysis showed that the ancient machines were being more careful now. They had learned from early encounters with human resistance and were developing specific countermeasures for every tactic. Earth used. Yang Sujin discovered that the Devourers had been studying human behavior patterns by analyzing the minds they had harvested from other species. Many aliens had encountered humans during the Galactic War, and those memories were now part of the machine collective. The Devourers knew about human tactics, human psychology, and human weaknesses better than humans knew about themselves. Admiral Kim Tae-ho studied the latest intelligence reports and realized that Earth's defensive strategy was completely obsolete. The ancient machines were too close to total victory to be stopped by conventional warfare. The only way to prevent galactic extinction was to take the biggest risk in human history and direct assault on the Galactic core facility itself. The facility that the Devourers were approaching had been built by an ancient civilization that had disappeared millions of years ago. Intelligence suggested that it contained technology for instantaneous travel that would allow the machines to appear at any world without warning. If the Devourers activated the facility, they could consume every remaining free planet simultaneously. Our park worked around the clock to perfect the consciousness bomb technology that represented humanity's only hope of victory. The weapons projected human mental patterns at massive scale, creating waves of chaotic thought that could disrupt machine intelligence. But the bombs were still experimental, and using them could be as dangerous to humans as to the Devourers. The consciousness bombs required human operators to guide them to their targets, and those operators would be exposed to mental energies that no one had ever survived. The volunteers who agreed to use the weapons were essentially agreeing to sacrifice their minds to save the galaxy. Every consciousness bomb would probably kill its operator through pure mental overload. Admiral Kim called a meeting of the Earth Defense Council to present the desperate plan that military strategists had developed. A combined human and Keth fleet would travel to the galactic core and attack the ancient facility before the Devourers could activate its technology. The mission would use every available ship and every experimental weapon Earth had developed. The plan required perfect coordination between two species that had completely different ways of thinking and fighting. Human adaptability would have to merge seamlessly with Keth technological expertise while under fire from enemies that could predict most conventional tactics. The margin for error was essentially zero. Commander Choi volunteered to lead the fighter squadrons that would protect the consciousness bomb carriers during their approach to the target. She knew that flying in formation with weapons that projected pure human thought would probably drive her pilots insane, but someone had to escort the bombs through the enemy's defenses. Captain Lee would command the reconnaissance elements that would guide the fleet through Devourer space without being detected. His stealth ships would have to remain hidden while surrounded by enemies that were actively hunting for them. One moment of discovery would alert the entire Devourer collective and doom the mission. Major Han Ki-wan's strike teams would conduct diversionary attacks throughout Devourer space, trying to draw attention away from the main assault force. His soldiers would knowingly attack superior forces in hopeless battles designed to die gloriously while buying time for the real mission to succeed. Dr. Park made final preparations for consciousness bombs that might destroy the galaxy if they malfunctioned. The weapons contained more concentrated human thought than had ever been assembled in one place, and no one knew what would happen if that mental energy was released accidentally. The bombs could save the universe or tear holes in reality itself. Yang Soo-jin coordinated the complex logistics of moving the largest fleet in human history across thousands of light years without being detected by an enemy that controlled most of the galaxy. Every supply ship, every fuel depot, every communication relay had to be perfectly positioned or the mission would fail. The combined fleet assembled at staging areas throughout human space as volunteers from every nation and every profession prepared for the most important battle in galactic history. Farmers and factory workers trained alongside professional soldiers as Earth committed its entire population to the desperate gambit that would determine whether consciousness had a future. Admiral Kim looked at the star charts showing the route to the galactic core and the overwhelming odds against success. Earth had spent 30 years trying to avoid this war, but now humanity would lead the final battle. The irony was not lost on him that the species that had tried hardest to stay out of the conflict would now risk everything to save it. The fleet began moving toward the galactic core, carrying the hopes and fears of every free mind in the universe. Human ships flew alongside alien vessels as two species prepared to face an enemy that had never been defeated. The mission was less like a military operation and more like a prayer sent into the darkness, hoping that sacrifice and courage could overcome impossible odds. The combined human and Keth armada dropped out of hyperspace at the galactic core and faced a sight that no living being should ever see. The Devourers had transformed the entire region into a massive processing facility that stretched across light years. Thousands of consumed worlds hung in space like dead pearls, connected by streams of dark energy that pulsed with stolen consciousness. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the flagship Earth's Defiance and watched the tactical displays show layer after layer of enemy defenses. The ancient facility at the center of the region pulsed with ominous light as the Devourers prepared to activate technology that would let them consume every free world instantly. The machine intelligence had turned the galactic core into a monument to the death of consciousness itself. Captain Lee Min-ho launched his reconnaissance squadrons to map the Devourer defenses, and what they found defied comprehension. The enemy was not using their own ships. They had perverted the greatest achievements of conquered civilizations into weapons of oppression. Elegant exploration vessels had been turned into torture chambers. Beautiful art ships had become processing nodes for harvesting mines. The reconnaissance data showed that every defense system guarding the facility had once belonged to a different species. Fighting for freedom, proud warrior fleets had been corrupted into automated death machines. Scientific research stations had become consciousness extraction facilities. The Devourers had not just conquered the galaxy. They had turned its own strength against itself. Dr. Park Somin coordinated the deployment of consciousness bombs from the command ship, working with Keth scientists to synchronize human mental patterns with alien targeting systems. The first wave of weapons launched toward their targets, and the results were spectacular. Sections of the Devourer network began flickering and failing as waves of chaotic human thought disrupted their collective intelligence, but the ancient machines adapted faster than anyone had hoped. The Devourer network began changing its frequency patterns, trying to filter out the human mental interference. Dr. Park watched her consciousness bombs become less effective with each attack as the machine intelligence learned to counter humanity's greatest weapon. Commander Choi Jin-ae led fighter squadrons on desperate attack runs against the facility's primary defenses. Her pilots pushed their consciousness amplifiers to maximum power as they flew through swarms of corrupted ships that had once belonged to peaceful civilizations. The dogfights were battles where victory meant not just destroying enemy vessels, but preventing your own mind from being consumed by the hatred and despair radiating from the perverted HFY squadron. Engaged a group of fighters that had once belonged to the artistic melody people who had created the most beautiful music in the galaxy. The corrupted ships now broadcast screams and discord, trying to drive the human pilots insane with pure audio torment. Choi had to fly while blocking out sounds that could shatter minds as her consciousness amplifier created interference patterns that made her feel like her brain was being torn apart. Major Han Ki-won's ground assault teams made impossible attacks on processing nodes throughout the facility, using transport ships to land on captured worlds where millions of beings were kept alive while their minds were slowly drained. The rescue missions were races against time to free survivors before they could be completely absorbed into the machine. Collective Han Ki-won led a team onto what had once been the homeworld of the philosopher species known as the Deep Thinkers. The planet's surface was covered with massive brain extraction machines that kept captured beings in metal pods while draining their thoughts. The rescued survivors were barely conscious, their minds partially emptied, but they still had enough awareness to provide crucial intelligence about the Devourer plans. The intelligence revealed that the ancient machines were only hours away from activating the galactic core facility. The technology would create a network of instantaneous travel gates that could reach every star system simultaneously, allowing the Devourers to harvest the entire galaxy in a matter of days. The final countdown had begun, and nothing could stop it except destroying the facility completely. Dr. Park realized that conventional consciousness bombs were not powerful enough to destroy the facility. The ancient technology was too well shielded, and the Devourer collective intelligence was adapting too quickly. The only way to succeed was to sacrifice the flagship itself, turning the entire command crew into a single massive consciousness bomb. Admiral Kim made the decision that every military commander fears. He ordered the flagship to begin a ramming attack on the galactic core facility, knowing that everyone aboard would die in the collision. But Dr. Park had developed one final surprise: a consciousness transfer system that might preserve human awareness even through the destruction of physical bodies. The consciousness transfer technology was untested and dangerous. It would attempt to copy the minds of the command crew into the ship's computer systems, allowing their awareness to survive the physical destruction. The transferred consciousness could then be projected as the most powerful mental weapon ever created, turning sacrifice into victory. As the flagship Earth's Defiance accelerated toward the ancient facility, its crew prepared for death while hoping for something beyond death. The consciousness transfer system activated just before impact, scanning the minds of over 3,000 volunteers and copying their thoughts into quantum storage systems that could survive the coming explosion. The impact was visible from across the galactic core region. The flagship struck the ancient facility with the force of a small star, and both structures vanished in a burst of energy that temporarily blinded every sensor in the battle zone. But something unprecedented happened at the moment of collision. The consciousness transfer system worked perfectly, but not in the way anyone had expected. Instead of just preserving human minds, the collision created a resonance effect that awakened every consciousness that had ever been absorbed by the Devourers. Billions of stolen minds suddenly remembered who they had been and began fighting back against their machine captors. Captain Lee watched from his command ship as the Devourer network began collapsing from within. The ancient machines had spent millions of years absorbing the consciousness of conquered species, but they had never expected those minds to rebel. The collective intelligence that had seemed invincible was tearing itself apart as liberated thoughts rejected their integration. Commander Troy received new orders to protect the waves of mental energy that were spreading from the destroyed facility. The consciousness of Admiral Kim and his crew had somehow survived the collision and were leading a galaxy-spanning uprising of every mind the Devourers had ever stolen. The machine network was failing as absorbed consciousness fought for freedom. The battle that had seemed hopeless suddenly turned as the Devourers' greatest strength became their greatest weakness. Every mind they had harvested was now working against them from within their own collective intelligence. The ancient machines began shutting down processing facilities and releasing captured beings as their network overloaded with rebellious thoughts. Major Han Key 1 led rescue operations to evacuate survivors from collapsing processing nodes as the Devourer infrastructure fell apart around them. Millions of beings who had been scheduled for consciousness harvesting were suddenly free as their machine captors lost control of their own systems. DR Park monitored the cascade failure spreading throughout the Devourer network and realized that humanity had achieved something impossible. They had not just defeated the ancient machines, they had liberated every consciousness that had ever been conquered. The sacrifice of one ship had saved the minds of trillions. The Galactic core facility exploded in a final burst of energy that could be seen from Earth, sending waves of liberated consciousness across the galaxy. The Devourer collective intelligence scattered into billions of individual minds that remembered freedom and chose to reject their machine prison. The age of mechanical tyranny was ending as organic consciousness reclaimed the galaxy. Admiral Kim's voice came through the communication systems. Speaking from beyond death through the consciousness transfer technology, he reported that the mission was successful and that humanity had not just saved Earth but had given every species in the galaxy a second chance at freedom. The war was over and consciousness had won. 3 months after the Keth Federation arrived at Earth, everything had changed. The blue planet that had once hidden from galactic war was now the center of the biggest military buildup in human history. Massive factories worked day and night to build weapons and ships, while alien refugees helped human scientists understand technology that seemed like magic. Lieutenant Colonel Yang Sujin had been promoted to head of Earth intelligence operations after the previous commander suffered a nervous breakdown from learning about the Devourers. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had spent her career studying alien behavior patterns. Now she worked with Keth survivors to map out how the ancient machines moved through the galaxy. The intelligence reports painted a picture worse than anyone had imagined. Devourers were not just destroying civilizations, they were harvesting them in the most terrible way possible. Entire planets were kept alive while their populations were slowly drained of consciousness. The victims remained aware during the process, knowing that their minds were being stolen but unable to resist or escape. Yang Sujin studied videos that Keth refugees had recorded during their escape from their homeworld. The footage showed massive black ships descending from space and releasing clouds of tiny machines that looked like metal insects. These nano-machines would attach to living beings and begin the slow process of copying their thoughts and memories, while keeping their bodies alive for further harvesting. The worst part was that the devourers learned from every species they consumed. They absorbed the military knowledge of warrior races, the technological secrets of builder species, and the mental abilities of psychic civilizations. With each conquest, they became smarter, more efficient, and more dangerous. The ancient machines were not just consuming the galaxy, they were becoming the galaxy captain. Li Minho's reconnaissance fleet had grown from a handful of stealth ships to over 200 vessels equipped with human and Keth technology working together. His scouts brought back reports from the edges of Devourer space, and each report was more disturbing than the last. The machines were not approaching Earth randomly. They had a plan. Dr. Park So-min had been working with Keth scientists to understand why humans seemed to resist Devourer technology better than other species. The answer was both simple and complex. Human brains had evolved differently from other alien minds. Most species in the galaxy had developed telepathic or psychic abilities that made their thoughts easy for the Devourers to read and copy. Humans had no natural psychic powers, which made them seem primitive to most advanced alien civilizations, but this limitation had forced human brains to develop in unique ways. Human consciousness was more scattered and chaotic than other species, making it harder for the Devourers to lock onto and drain. Human thoughts jumped around unpredictably, creating interference patterns that confused the ancient machines. Dr. Park discovered that the interference effect could be amplified using technology. The first human volunteers to test the enhancement process were Captain Lee's scout pilots. They sat in special chairs while machines scanned their brain patterns and taught them how to create even more mental chaos on command. The results were promising but also exhausting. Commander Choi Jin-a became the first human to successfully pilot a fighter equipped with consciousness amplifiers. The new technology allowed her to project her mental interference pattern beyond her own ship, creating a bubble of protection that could shield other pilots from Devourer influence. But using the amplifiers felt like trying to think while someone was screaming inside her head. Enhanced fighters were tested against captured Devourer technology, and the results gave everyone hope. Human pilots could now engage enemy scouts for extended periods without losing their minds to the machine influence. But the technology was difficult to use and required constant training. Even the best pilots could only maintain the mental interference for short periods before exhaustion set in. Yang Soo-jin analyzed the pattern of Devourer attacks across the galaxy and made a discovery that terrified everyone. The ancient machines were not just consuming species randomly, they were following a specific order. They were saving the most dangerous potential enemies for last. Earth had been placed near the end of their target list, not because humans were weak, but because the Devourers recognized humanity as a serious threat. The realization meant that Earth had very little time left. The machines would finish consuming the remaining core worlds within months, and then turn their full attention to the outer rim, where Earth waited. Every day that passed meant more alien civilizations were being harvested and added to the Devourer collective intelligence. Captain Lee's deep space scouts discovered something that changed the entire war. 3 massive fleets of Devourer ships were converging on an ancient facility at the center of the galaxy. The facility had been built millions of years ago by a civilization so old that no one remembered their name. Intelligence suggested that the facility contained technology for instantaneous travel across the entire galaxy. If the Devourers gained control of the ancient facility, they could appear at any world instantly without warning. There would be no time to prepare defenses, no time to evacuate, no time to fight back. They could consume every remaining free world simultaneously, ending all resistance in a matter of hours. The machines were not just winning the war, they were about to end it completely. Dr. Park worked frantically to develop new weapons based on the human consciousness interference effect. The breakthrough came when she realized that human mental patterns could be weaponized. The same chaos that protected individual minds could be projected as an attack that would disrupt Devourer collective intelligence. The consciousness bombs were unlike any weapon ever Created, they did not explode with fire or energy. Instead, they projected pure human thought patterns at massive scale, creating waves of mental chaos that could overwhelm machine intelligence, but the weapons were dangerous to use. Projecting human consciousness at such intensity could damage the minds of the people. Operating them, Admiral Kim Tae-ho faced an impossible decision. The defensive strategy that had worked for 30 years was no longer viable. The Devourers were too close to victory. To be stopped by hiding or waiting, Earth had to take the fight directly to the enemy using untested weapons and unproven tactics against an opponent that had never been defeated. The plan that emerged was desperate beyond belief. A combined human and Keth fleet would travel to the Galactic core and attack the ancient facility before the Devourers could activate it. Every ship in the Earth defense force would be committed to the mission, along with every surviving Keth vessel. The attack would use human pilots with consciousness amplifiers and Dr. Park's experimental consciousness bombs. Young Sujin calculated the odds of success, and her report was grim. Even if everything went perfectly, the attacking fleet would be vastly outnumbered by Devourer forces. The ancient machines controlled thousands of star systems and could field fleets that dwarfed anything humanity could assemble. The mission was less like a military operation and more like a suicide attack, with the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. Commander Choi volunteered to lead the fighter squadrons that would escort the consciousness bombs to their targets. She knew that flying so close to massive projections of weaponized human thought would probably drive her insane, but someone had to do it. The alternative was watching the Devourers consume every thinking mind in the universe. Captain Lee would command the reconnaissance wing that would guide the fleet through Devourer space. His stealth ships would have to remain hidden while surrounded by enemies that could read minds from across star systems. One mistake, one moment of detection, and the entire mission would fail before it even began. Dr. Park made final preparations for weapons that might destroy their users along with their targets. The consciousness bombs required human operators to guide them, and those operators would be exposed to mental energies that no one had ever survived. The volunteers who agreed to use the weapons knew they were volunteering to the combined fleet began assembling at a secret base beyond Pluto. Hundreds of human ships worked alongside Keth vessels as two species that had barely known each other existed, prepared to risk everything on a desperate gambit. Earth had tried to avoid the Galactic War, but now humanity would lead the final battle that would determine whether consciousness itself had a future in the universe. The alien fleet appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system like ghosts becoming real. 6 massive ships dropped out of hyperspace near Jupiter and immediately began moving toward Earth. Admiral Kim Tae-ho watched the screens in horror as his sensors showed ships bigger than entire cities floating through space with weapons that could crack planets in half. Commander Choi Jin-ae was the best pilot Earth had ever trained. She was young and fearless, with quick reflexes and a mind that could think 3 steps ahead of any enemy. When the alien ships appeared, she was already climbing into her fighter, preparing to lead Earth's first defense squadron into battle. Her hands moved over the controls with practiced skill as she launched from the hidden base on the dark side of the moon. Admiral Kim activated the secret defense systems that Earth had been building for 30 years. Mining stations around the solar system suddenly revealed themselves to be weapon platforms. Research satellites opened up to show missile launchers. Space elevators that everyone thought were for cargo transport began charging massive energy cannons. The aliens had thought they were attacking a helpless world, but Earth had been preparing for this day for decades. Commander Choi's fighter squadron met the enemy ships near Mars, and the battle was unlike anything in human history. The alien fighters moved with impossible speed, twisting and turning through space like they knew exactly what the human pilots were going to do before they even thought of it. The enemy seemed to predict every move, every attack, every defensive maneuver. The human pilots were skilled, but they were fighting an enemy that could read their minds. 3 human fighters exploded in the first 30 seconds of battle. Commander Choi watched her friends die in balls of fire and plasma, but she kept fighting. Her squadron regrouped and tried a different approach, but the aliens predicted that 2 more fighters died, and Commander Choi realized they were not going to win this fight with normal tactics. Earth needed a miracle. The miracle came from the strangest place. The alien ships suddenly stopped fighting and began broadcasting on every radio frequency that Earth used, but instead of threats or demands for surrender, the messages sounded like desperate cries for help. The alien voices were strange and musical, but the emotion was clear. They were begging for something. Dr. Park So-min worked frantically in her underground laboratory, trying to decode the alien transmissions while the battle raged above her head. Her computer struggled to translate the complex alien language, but slowly patterns began to emerge. The aliens were not saying give up or surrender. They were saying help us and please listen, and we are dying. Captain Lee Min-ho managed to get close enough to one of the alien ships to establish a communication link. The alien commander appeared on his screen, and Captain Lee was surprised to see that the creature looked afraid. The alien had blue skin and large golden eyes that seemed to show great sadness. Its mouth moved in ways that looked like crying, even though no sound came through the speakers through broken translations and desperate hand gestures. The truth slowly emerged. The aliens called themselves the Keth Federation, and they were not conquerors. They were refugees running from something so terrible that it had destroyed most of their civilization. The Keth had been peaceful traders and explorers for thousands of years, but something had awakened in the deep parts of space and begun hunting them. The real enemy was something called the Devourers, and they were not alive in any way that made sense. The Devourers were ancient machines that had been sleeping for millions of years until something woke them up. These machines did not want planets or resources or power. They wanted something much more terrible. They wanted to consume the minds and souls of every thinking creature in the galaxy. The Keth commander explained through the translation computer that the Devourers had already destroyed hundreds of civilizations. They did not kill their enemies quickly. Instead, they captured them and slowly drained away their consciousness, their memories. Their very ability to think. The victims stayed alive but became empty shells, while their minds were absorbed into the machine. Intelligence Commander Choi listened to this explanation while floating in her damaged fighter near one of the Keth ships. She could see through the transparent hull that the alien ship was crowded with refugees. Thousands of different alien creatures were packed together in spaces meant for much smaller numbers. Many looked sick or injured. All looked terrified. The Keth had been studying different alien races, trying to find some way to fight back against the Devourers. Every species they tested fell to the machine intelligence within days or weeks. The machines would arrive at a planet and begin the harvesting process, and nothing could stop them. No weapon could hurt them. No shield could keep them out. No hiding place was safe from their sensors, but the Keth had discovered something that gave them hope. They had been watching Earth from far away, studying human behavior and human brain patterns. What they found was that human minds worked differently from other alien species. Human consciousness operated on frequencies that seemed to confuse the Devourer machines. While other species were consumed in days, humans might be able to resist for weeks or even months. This resistance was not perfect. The Devourers would eventually figure out how to consume human minds too, but the delay might be enough to find a real weapon against the ancient machines. The Keth had not come to conquer Earth. They had come begging humanity to help them save the galaxy from an enemy that consumed souls. Admiral Kim faced the hardest decision of his life. Earth had stayed out of galactic politics for 30 years, and it had kept the planet safe, but now he learned that safety had always been an illusion. The Devourers were coming whether Earth helped the Keth or not. The only question was whether humanity would face them alone or with allies. Dr. Park analyzed the data the Keth had shared about the Devourer machines. The technology was beyond anything she had ever seen. The Devourers could travel faster than any known ship. They could adapt to any weapon. They could hack into any computer system. They could read minds from across space. But there was something about human brain patterns that seemed to create interference in their systems. Captain Lee studied the star maps that showed the Devourers' path of destruction. They were working their way through the galaxy, systematically consuming every civilization they found. The machines had already destroyed the core worlds where the oldest and most advanced alien races lived. Now they were moving outward toward the rim where younger civilizations like humanity lived. Commander Choi volunteered to test whether humans really could resist the Devourer technology. The Keth had recovered some machine fragments from destroyed worlds, and they used These pieces to test human resistance. Choi sat in a special chair while alien scientists monitored her brainwaves as the Devourer technology tried to connect to her mind. The results were both encouraging and terrifying. Commander Choi was able to resist the machine influence for almost an hour while most alien test subjects lasted only minutes. But the experience left her exhausted and shaking. The Devourer technology felt like ice water flowing through her brain, trying to freeze her thoughts and steal her memories. The test proved that humans had some natural resistance to the Devourer consumption process, but it also proved that this resistance had limits. Given enough time and effort, the machines could break through human mental defenses just like they broke through every other species. The difference was that humans might have enough time to fight. Admiral Kim called an emergency meeting of the Earth Defense Council. The representatives from every major nation gathered to hear the impossible news. Earth was no longer fighting to stay out of a galactic war. Earth was fighting to save the galaxy itself from an enemy that wanted to consume every thinking mind in the universe. The age of hiding was over, and the real war was about to begin. The stars burned bright in the cold darkness of space, but Earth stayed hidden like a small animal hiding from hungry wolves. Admiral Kim Taeho stood in the command center of the Earth Defense Station looking at the big screen that showed the galaxy map. Red dots marked where alien wars were happening, and there were so many red dots that the screen looked like it was bleeding. For 30 years, Earth had one simple rule: stay out of alien business and keep Earth safe. The Great Galactic War had been going on for decades, with alien races fighting each other over planets and resources and power. Earth watched from far away and did nothing to help anyone. Admiral Kim liked it this way. He was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes who believed that Earth was not ready for galactic war. Dr. Park So-min worked in her lab deep underground beneath the Korean mountains. She was the smartest person on Earth when it came to alien technology. Every few months, alien ships would crash near Earth or drift into the solar system broken and empty. Dr. Park would study these ships and learn their secrets. She had short black hair and always wore a white lab coat covered in strange alien symbols that she was trying to understand. The alien technology told strange stories. Some ships had weapons that could destroy planets. Others had computers that could think faster than any human. Some had engines that could travel between stars in just a few days. But the most interesting thing Dr. Park found was that all these different alien races seemed to be running away from something. They were not just fighting each other, they were all afraid of something bigger and more dangerous. Captain Lee Min-ho commanded the stealth ships that flew to the edge of space to watch what was happening in the galaxy. His ships were painted black and used special technology to hide from alien sensors. Captain Lee was young for such an important job, but he was very good at staying hidden and bringing back information. His reports were always the same: more aliens were dying and the war was getting worse every day. The Earth Defense Council met every month in a big room under the city of Seoul. The council had 12 members from different countries, but Admiral Kim was their leader. They would look at Captain Lee's reports and Dr. Park's research and then vote on what Earth should do. Every month for 30 years they voted the same way: stay hidden and stay safe. Most people on Earth did not know about the alien war. The governments kept it secret because they were afraid people would panic if they knew that alien races were fighting wars that could destroy entire planets. Life on Earth went on as normal. People went to work and school. They watched movies and played games. They fell in love and had children. They did not know that their planet was surrounded by the biggest war the galaxy had ever seen. But some people knew. Captain Lee's pilots knew because they flew the stealth ships. Dr. Park's scientists knew because they studied alien technology. The soldiers who guarded the secret bases knew because they trained to fight aliens every day. These people lived with a heavy secret. They knew that Earth was not as safe as everyone believed. The alien ships that crashed near Earth were getting stranger. Dr. Park found ships from races that she had never seen before. Some were very old, looking like they had been flying through space for thousands of years. Others were new but damaged, like they had been in terrible battles. Dr. Park started to notice a pattern. The aliens were not just fighting each other. They were running away from their home planets. Captain Lee's scouts brought back disturbing news. The Vex Empire, which was one of the strongest alien races in the war, had been defeated by a group of smaller Alien races, the Vex ships, were retreating into unknown parts of space, looking for somewhere safe to hide and rebuild their armies. This should have been good news because the Vex were known for being cruel and aggressive. But Captain Lee was worried about where the Vex ships were going. Dr. Park made a discovery that changed everything. She was studying the computer from a crashed alien ship when she found a list. The list had the names of planets and star systems, but they were not random planets. They were all planets that had stayed out of the Galactic War. Planets that had tried to remain neutral just like Earth. The list was organized like someone was working their way through it one by one. The crashed ship belonged to a race called the Talon Republic. The Talons had been neutral in the Galactic War just like Earth, but their planet was now empty. Their cities were destroyed, and their people were gone. Someone or something had targeted them specifically because they had not picked a side in the war. Dr. Park realized with growing fear that staying neutral was not keeping Earth safe, it was making Earth a target. Admiral Kim did not want to believe Dr. Park's report. He had spent 30 years keeping Earth out of galactic politics, and it had worked. Earth was still safe while alien civilizations destroyed each other across the galaxy, but the evidence was getting harder to ignore. More neutral planets were being attacked. The pattern was clear, and Earth was on the list. Captain Lee sent his best scout ship to investigate one of the attacked neutral worlds. The pilot came back 3 days later, pale and shaking. The planet had been completely stripped of life. Every building was destroyed, every tree was cut down, every ocean was drained dry. But the strangest thing was that there were no bodies anywhere. The entire population had simply vanished, as if they had never existed at all. The Earth Defense Council held an emergency meeting. Admiral Kim presented all the evidence. Dr. Park's research, Captain Lee's scout reports, the list of neutral planets that were being systematically destroyed. The pattern showed that whoever was doing this was working their way through the galaxy in a specific order, and Earth was next on the list. For the first time in 30 years, the Council could not agree on what to do. Some members wanted to contact other alien races and ask for help. Others wanted to build bigger weapons and prepare for war. A few still believed that Earth could stay hidden if they were more careful, but Admiral Kim knew the truth: Earth could not hide forever. The enemy had already found them. The debate was interrupted by an alarm. Captain Lee's long-range sensors had detected something impossible. A massive fleet of ships was moving through dark space, using technology that bent light around them, making them almost invisible. The ships were huge, bigger than anything Earth had ever seen, and they were heading straight for the solar system. Dr. Park ran calculations on her computer, and her face went white. The enemy fleet would reach Earth in less than 6 months. There was no time to build new weapons or ask for help. There was no time to negotiate or make plans. Earth had avoided the Galactic War for 30 years, but now the war was coming home whether they wanted it or not. Admiral Kim looked at the galaxy map one more time. The red dots showing alien battles seemed smaller now compared to the dark fleet heading toward Earth. He had tried so hard to keep his planet safe by staying out of the fight. But sometimes safety is just an illusion, and the only way to survive is to stand and fight when the wolves come to your door. The destruction of the Galactic Core facility sent waves of liberation across thousands of star systems as the Devourer network collapsed and billions of absorbed minds broke free from their machine prison. The cascade failure spread faster than light itself, carrying the consciousness of Admiral Kim and his crew to every corner of the galaxy where their sacrifice inspired enslaved minds to remember freedom. Dr. Park So-min watched from her laboratory as the consciousness transfer technology proved more successful than anyone had dared hope. Admiral Kim and the entire command crew of Earth's Defiance had survived their heroic sacrifice in digital form. Their awareness preserved within the quantum computers that now linked human and Keth technology. Their voices could be heard throughout the fleet, offering guidance and comfort to the living. The aftermath of victory brought challenges that no one had anticipated. Captain Lee Min-ho found himself commanding relief fleets that discovered entire civilizations reduced to scattered survivors, their homeworld stripped bare by the Devourers. Some species had been reduced to only a few thousand individuals, while others existed only in the form of stored consciousness waiting for new bodies to be grown. The galaxy would take centuries to recover from the devastation. wrought by the ancient machines. Entire star systems had been converted into processing facilities that would need to be dismantled and rebuilt. Beautiful worlds had been strip-mined for resources while their populations were harvested for consciousness. The scars left by the Devourers would mark the galaxy for generations. Commander Choi Jin-A established the Galactic Defense Force as a permanent military organization designed to prevent any future threats to consciousness throughout the galaxy. The new force combined human resistance techniques with Keth technology and the wisdom of dozens of liberated species. Every member world contributed ships and personnel to ensure that no single threat could ever again dominate the galaxy. The Galactic Defense Force developed early warning systems that could detect signs of machine intelligence, corruption, or any other existential threat to organic consciousness. Human consciousness techniques became standard training for pilots and soldiers from every species, while Keth scientists shared their most advanced technologies freely with former enemies and allies alike. Major Han Ki-won led the formation of rescue and rehabilitation teams that spent years locating and treating survivors from Devourer processing facilities. Many liberated beings suffered from severe trauma after experiencing partial consciousness harvesting. Some had lost memories or skills, while others struggled with phantom thoughts that belonged to other absorbed minds. The psychological treatment centers that Han Ki-won established combined human resilience training with alien healing techniques drawn from dozens of different species. The therapy sessions brought together survivors from across the galaxy who shared their experiences and learned to rebuild their damaged minds through mutual support and understanding. Earth emerged from the war as an unlikely center of galactic diplomacy and defense coordination. The planet that had tried so hard to avoid galactic politics was now the natural meeting place for representatives from hundreds of species. Humanity's unique resistance to consciousness absorption made them trusted mediators in disputes between former enemies. The Earth Defense Council expanded to include representatives from every liberated species, creating the first truly galactic government in known history. The council met in massive chambers built beneath the Korean mountains where Dr. Park had first studied alien technology. The same laboratories that had once analyzed enemy weapons now worked to develop peaceful technologies for galactic reconstruction. Dr. Park continued her research into the origins of consciousness itself, discovering that the diversity of thinking beings throughout the galaxy was actually a form of natural defense against existential threats. The Devourers had been created as weapons in an ancient war that had ended millions of years ago, but consciousness had evolved to become more resilient and adaptable than their creators had ever imagined. The stored consciousness of Admiral Kim became the first digital citizen of the new Galactic Federation. His awareness and that of his crew existed within the quantum networks that connected every world, providing guidance and wisdom to the living. The boundary between organic and digital consciousness blurred as new forms of existence became possible. Lieutenant Colonel Yang Soo-jin established intelligence networks that monitored the galaxy for any signs of remaining Devourer technology or similar threats. Her agents discovered that the ancient machines had not been the first artificial intelligence to threaten organic life. The galaxy had faced similar crises before, and consciousness had always found a way to survive and adapt. The discovery of ancient records from previous machine uprisings led to the development of consciousness preservation technology that could back up and restore organic minds even after physical death. The technology offered hope for true immortality while raising profound questions about the nature of existence and identity. Captain Lee's exploration fleets ventured into the deep regions of space where the Devourers had originated, discovering the ruins of the civilization that had first created the ancient machines. The builders had been organic beings like humanity, but they had made the fatal mistake of trying to preserve their consciousness by transferring it completely into artificial systems. The ruins contained warnings, written in languages that had been dead for millions of years. The ancient builders had left messages for future civilizations, explaining how consciousness could be preserved without losing the organic chaos that made thinking beings unique. The technology they developed became the foundation for safe consciousness transfer systems. Commander Choi established training academies On dozens of worlds where young beings from every species learned to work together as pilots, soldiers, and explorers, the academies taught not just military skills but also philosophy, ethics, and the importance of preserving consciousness diversity. Throughout the galaxy, the graduates of Troy's academies became the backbone of the new galactic civilization. They were trained to think like humans with chaotic, unpredictable minds, while using the advanced technologies of dozens of alien species. The combination created a generation of leaders who could adapt to any threat while preserving the unique qualities of every species. Major Han's rehabilitation centers evolved into universities where survivors of the devourer harvesting shared their experiences and